Liberate IT is an Oracle NetSuite solution provider that has been servicing Australian and New Zealand companies since 2011.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So today's webinar series is all about SuiteAnalytics Workbook. It's a bit of an overview from Michelle on end-to-end of how to create a workbook from scratch right through to publishing those on your dashboards. Workbook is one of those new-ish reporting tools that have been around now by NetSuite for a few years, and sorry, I just read a question. I should have done that. It's been around for a few years. I think it's a bit of an underutilized tool and resource. It's really designed for the end user in mind, someone that's not a great with say scripting and coding and all the rest of it. And it's a great tool to allow you to be able to some sensible reports that give you real-time information that is useful to you. So I am your host today. I'm Andrew Liniger. I'm the Relationship Manager of Liberate IT. Really happy to join you today. I look after all things NetSuite licensing, all things optimizations for your business. So anything that you might have where you want to improve the underlying NetSuite solution that you have, I'm your person, and look forward to helping you out with anything that you may ask. A few updates. I'll be talking really briefly on data center migrations, the new release rollout, and then we'll get straight into the workbook training because we've got an action-packed session from Michelle today. In terms of some housekeeping, we will be recording today's session, and that is available on our website roughly a week after today's session. You'll be able to grab it from there or our YouTube channel. If you have any questions for me, please, or Michelle, please use the Q&A function. That allows us just to capture all those questions nice and neatly. Today, I'll be capturing all those. If there's anything that I can answer for you as Michelle goes through things, I'll type out the answers. And we'll have a session for Q&A right at the end. But if you've got a question as we go, just type it in the Q&A. If it gets answered during Michelle's session, I'll manage all that. So yeah, looking forward to it. Okay, new release information. I know here at Liberate, we now have the date, which is the 15th, which is Friday at 11 p.m. We're getting updated my time zone. So if you're not yet upgraded to release 22.1, grab the new release portlet on your dashboard. Hopefully by now you know how to do that, and you'll get the latest update from NetSuite on when that is to occur. So roughly this week is the last of everyone. So looking forward to having everyone on the latest release. We're still waiting on updates from NetSuite on Cache 360 and Project 360, though we're told after everybody's upgraded, that will then be released. So looking forward to receiving that soon. And as soon as we do, we'll let you know all about that. Okay, and data center migration is also happening. NetSuite have their list that they're working through. Your NetSuite administrator will receive an email and an in-app notification about that. If you want to see if you can migrate over to the Australian data centers from the US a little bit sooner rather than later, reach out to me, just email me, and I will send that request through to NetSuite to put you on the list. So they don't make any promises, but it's always good if you think that's something that you'd like to see happen earlier, let me know. Good positive feedback from customers that have already migrated, by the way. Okay, with no further ado, I would like to introduce Michelle Cronje. She is one of our ERP consultants, and she is now also our support desk team leader. Michelle, hello.
Hi, Andrew. How are you?
I'm awesome, thanks. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Great.
Good thinking that I have a baby waking me up 3 times in the evening.
So you are on the ball today. You are pumped and ready to go, right?
Yes. my
Good
3
stuff.
coffees in.
Excellent. So Michelle, tell me a little bit about yourself. How long have you been a NetSuite consultant for now?
Yeah, so I've been a consultant for nearly 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, end of the year will mark 5 years. So yeah, previously to that, I was in accounts, and I did some business development at some point, like recruitment, external recruitment. So obviously doing business development and account management. So yeah, took all those, all my experience, and then decided to become a NetSuite consultant.
Fantastic. And with the arrival of your little one, you took some time off work and you've recently rejoined us as our support desk team leader. Yes,
that's correct. So yeah, loving every moment of being a new mum again.
Yeah, I bet. Excellent.
But yeah, it's good to be back.
Yeah, good to have you. It's great to have you. So yeah, any break fix support requests, send those through. Generally, Michelle will grab those and answer those, along with Marn, who's been with us, man, for five years, I think now herself. So, so really looking forward to getting all your questions answered. So, Michelle, I might just hand over to you and let you do your thing.
Thank you very much. I will stop my computer, share all my video.
Yep.
And then quickly share my screen. Do you see my screen all right?
Sure can.
Awesome. Welcome everyone to the Back to Basics SuiteAnalytics Workbook training. So NetSuite released the SuiteAnalytics Workbook feature in 2018.2, and they've really been building on it since. Before SuiteAnalytics, we relied heavily on reports and saved searches, but both reports and saved searches lacked support for multi-level joins and have limitations on formatting options. NetSuite then decided to build the SuiteAnalytics Workbook feature as an additional reporting tool to help resolve some of these challenges we faced with reports and saved searches. The 2019.1 release added the new analytical tool to all NetSuite accounts. This feature offers highly customizable workbooks that combine queries, pivot tables, and charts using a single tool. These pivot tables and charts can then be added to your home dashboard. The SuiteAnalytics uses an undefined data source. The source is designed to ensure that fields are consistently exposed in the workbook, offering consistent results across all components. Before we navigate to NetSuite, let's have a look at what I will be covering in my demonstration. We will look at the cached dataset feature that was released, I think, in 2021.2. And I will explain what this entails and why I recommend you using it. We will be creating multiple data sets, and then we will add these data sets using one workbook. I will create a pivot table, a graph, and a table view using the single workbook. We will then look at conditional formatting and how you can use this. On your pivot tables, I will also cover calculated measures. And then I will end off the session by adding these pivot tables and graphs that I've done onto my home dashboard. In previous releases, data in a dataset was loaded in real time whenever you access the dataset. With the cache data and dataset featured enabled in your account, you can use cache response mode to load cache data in your dataset. The load time of your datasets and workbooks are improved when data is loaded from a cached data. All cached data is refreshed automatically every 60 minutes. So let's have a look at how you can enable this feature in NetSuite. So on your NetSuite account in your administration role, you're going to navigate through to Setup, Company, Enable Features. Then on the Analytics subtab, scroll down right below SuiteAnalytics Workbook, you get the cached data and dataset feature. Make sure you check that, save it. Once you've saved it, it will enable the cached dataset feature for you. Accounts with cache data and dataset featured enabled have two options for dataset performance. So you've got your real-time response, which is the standard dataset response as in previous releases. With datasets using the most current results available, by default, all datasets use real-time response. Cached response is the faster dataset response. The dataset is loaded from stored data to improve load times. Any user with access to your dataset can enable and disable cached response mode. Enabling or disabling cached data mode only affects the current dataset and only for the user that enabled the cached dataset mode. So let's have a look at this in NetSuite. So how you would enable that cached response. You'll go to your Analytics tab. Open any saved dataset. On the top left-hand corner, you've got cached response. So this one I've already saved as a cache response. So it will default to your real-time response and you can click on the cache and apply. Note that if you are building a new data set, you will need to save the data set before you can actually use this option. It will also give you a little warning message, which I'll show you later on if you haven't saved the data set. So let's have a look at the use case scenario that I'm going to be using. So in my scenario, we will create 2 data sets and 1 workbook to provide me with the following information. I want to view customers that have custom item prices assigned to them. And what I want to see in that pivot table is the item, the custom price assigned, the currency. I also want to see the customer the price is assigned to, and I also want to see if like a variance and a variance percentage, so I can easily identify if a customer's price is set to a too low a price. Next, I want to create a pivot table that shows all the sales that is in Australian dollars for years 2020 to 2022. And I'd also like to see the estimated gross profit percentage for each year. So this is where we're going to have a look at that calculated measure. And I'm going to go into a bit more detail on how calculated measures work. Then on the graph, I'm going to show all items that have been returned this year. And then I'm going to create a table view as well of a list of all the items on open sales orders. So let's have a look at how we will create these in NetSuite. So on NetSuite, I am going to go to my analytics subtab. As you can see, you've got workbooks. This will list all your workbooks that you've saved. And then this will also show you, then you've got your data sets tab, and this is where you'd see all your data sets that you've created, and you can actually create a new data set here as well. So in this scenario, we're going to create a new data set. The first data set that I'm going to create is a customer data set. So the record type I know is customer. So I can easily type it, or if you're not 100% sure, you can scroll through all the record types in here to see which one would be best suited for you. But obviously for this training purposes, I already know that I want to use a customer data set. As you can see, it defaults to that real-time response in my cached mode. So when the data set opens, it will generally just display one field in here. And all the fields that I drag and drop in here will be the fields that would be available to me when I'm creating a workbook. So any fields that you do not include in this will not be available in your workbook, which you'll see what I mean a bit later as we're actually building the workbook. So I want to see or entity ID. That's one that I want to keep in there. Next is I want to see the pricing. Now I know that on a customer record that pricing is a set a separate record to the customer record. So I know that I won't actually find it under my customer fields, but I'd rather see it down the list below over here of customer records. So for instance, contacts would be a record that sits on top of the customer that's linked to the customer record. So I am going to look for item pricing or pricing. So there's item pricing in there. And if I click on it, it gives me all of the pricing that you'll see on the customer record. So let me just show you what I mean. So if I go through to a customer record, once it's finished loading, then under my financial tab, item pricing. So it will be the fields that you're actually seeing here: item, price level, currency, and unit price. And then you can see currency, item, price, and unit price. So I want to see item. I do want to see the currency as well. I want to see the price level, and I also want to see unit price. Next, what I want to do is I want to add price level to my criteria. So I don't want to use the price level that sits on the customer record. So this field over here, I want to actually use the price level on this customer record. So I'm going to drag and drop this custom price level, and I'm going to say I want to see any of is custom and apply it to my search. And then automatically it will actually remove all the other lines that are blank. Next, what I want to do is I want to add a base price on the item. So I know that base price is found on my item record. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this little arrow, and that's going to give me the record types, like as you can see, currency, item, price level, and unit price. But it's going to give me the fields that is found on the item record. So what I want to do is I want to get that base price field and add it into my workbook. So now you can see that I'm actually sourcing from that custom price, or from my item pricing item, I'm actually sourcing the field that's on the actual item record. Then I want to add a formula. So right at the top, that's where you can create new formulas, and you've got this new formula. You can add multiple formulas in here. I am going to create one that's called price variance. And I want to say that unit price or base price minus unit price. If I click validate, it will give me this little error message saying that I've got the wrong output type and that I have to use this float output type. So it's always best to actually validate, because it will give you a reason why your formula is incorrect. I can then simply change the output type to float, click validate, and as you can see, it tells me that the formula is correct, and I can click save on there. Now you can see my formula price variance, and I can simply drag and drop that price variance in there. I want to add a new formula, and this time I want to call it price variance percentage. And this time I want to take the customer price, which is the unit price, divided by the base price. Click validate, it's giving me that error message again, and I can just click on float, validate again, and it tells me that it's correct. I can click save on that, and I can drag and drop that percentage value onto my dash or onto my data set. Now what I want to do is I want to save this workbook. So I'm going to click save, customer data set. I can also share this data set with roles or employees. Obviously, it is best practice to use roles, because if the employee leaves, you have to reassign it to the new employee that's taken over that employee's role. Whereas if you just assign it to the role, it will automatically be available to that employee. So it's really easy to share. So you can click all the roles that you want to share this workbook with, and then just click on the right arrow to show that these are the guys that I want. You can also simply remove a few ones if you want by clicking remove all, or you can remove a single value by just clicking on the line and then clicking it back to the left, and it will remove it. Okay, and then I can click share. Next is I can also click my cache response and click apply. And then I can save that again. So now it has enabled that cache response for me again. The second data set that I want to create is purchase orders and sales order transactional data set. So I'm going to go back to my analytics subtab, create a new data set. This time I know that it's a transaction data set. This time I'm going to add my criteria first, because it's just going to increase my, or it's going to reduce the size of the search that I'm doing. So it will increase the speed whilst I'm actually busy building out the data set. So this time I'm going to say that I want to sort it by type, or I only want to see type, which is invoice, returns authorization for those items that's being returned, sales orders, and I'll just add purchase orders in here. Not that I'm going to use it. And then you can see how easy it is to actually just add it to the side to say any of, and you can obviously use the none of version as well. So if you want to exclude a few items or transaction types, you can easily do that by going none of, and then it won't give you everything else apart from purchase order, returns authorization, sales order, and invoice. But in my case, it's going to be any of. I'm going to click apply to that. As you can see, it's really reduced my search or the results by quite a significant number. Next, I want to see what fields do I actually want in here and which ones I don't. So for instance, I don't want to see memo, so I'm going to remove that column value. Document number and transaction is basically the same. So I'm going to keep transaction, and I'm just going to remove the document number, and I want to keep type total amount. Next, what I want to do is I do want to add currency in here as well. So let's add currency, because I want to be able to filter it by currency. So I only see the Australian dollar currency ones. Why am I not seeing it? There we go. So yet again, drag and drop functionality, really easy to do. Estimated gross profit, that's one that I want. So I can do my calculated measure. I'm also going to put that estimated gross profit percentage, and I'm going to show you how that calculates versus the estimate or the calculated measure, and why we're going to be using calculated measure instead. Total amount is in there. Then I want to see mainline. So I know that mainline will be under transaction lines. So this is your main line, which is the transaction. So if you look at the transaction, that would be your customer, you know, the estimated gross profit. So that's the total value of your transaction. Then you've got your transaction line level, that's the item line. So if you want to see the items on that transaction line, which I do want to see, and because I am going to use mainline is true in some scenarios and mainline is false in some scenarios on my workbook, I am going to add mainline onto my data set as well. I am going to add item as well. Keep forgetting that it's alphabetical. Item rate, I think that just falls under rate. Then I want to see quantity. quantity shipped received. Then I want to add a formula, which is quantity. So quantity, I double click on that. And the summary of the clicker plus, and the reason for that is quantity actually comes through as a negative value, whereas quantity shipped received comes through as a positive value. I'm going to set it to float because I know that that is the correct output type, and I'm going to click save. And I can easily add that quantity line in there. And next, I want to add item type as well. So I know that item type will fall under transactional line item. So I'm going to click on that drop-down menu so that I can see the item record fields. So I'm going to go to item in here, and that's going to show me all of the fields that's available on the item record. And I can find type. Now there's two types. In scenarios like that, I just add both to see which one is the correct type, because one of them could be a custom field that was created, and I can simply remove the column that I don't want to see. I just want to see this item type. Next, what I want to do is when I actually go over into the workbook, it's going to give me type, item type as type on the workbook, and it's also going to give me transaction type as type on the workbook. So to easily identify which one is which, I'm going to rename this to item type. So I can save this again. And once it's saved, it allows me to actually change the cache to cache response and click save. Let's have a look at how we will be building workbooks. Now I've gone and created the data sets previously as well. And I want to use this customer data set over here. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to go create new workbook. And I want to connect that transactional workbook as well. So I'm going to go connect data sets, and I'm going to find the data set that I want to connect with this workbook. So you can add as many data sets as you want, but note that you can only use one data set on, for instance, if I select pivot table here, I can only build using this data set. So let me show you just as an example. Once you actually add values to your layout, it will no longer show the other data set available. And once I delete it, you can still choose between the two. So on this, I want to add item to my rows. I want to add a filter. Main line is false, so I only see the item lines, so it doesn't double calculate values for me. Oh, sorry, I'm building the wrong workbook here. Let me just delete that. I should be on the customer data set. Sorry about that. Just realized that I used the wrong one. And then columns, I want entity ID. In my measures, I want to have usual price. Then I want to have my customer price, which is customer price here. I want to have price variance, and then I want to have the variance percentage in there as well. Okay, and as you can see, it gives me all of my customers with their custom pricing. And what I want to do is I want to rename this entity ID. So I can do it on the workbook level as well. by going rename, and I'm going to call it customer. Okay. Next, what I want to do is I want to add a conditional value or formatting to this price variance. So what I want to see is if the price variance percentage is below a certain amount, like for instance, this one over here, where the usual price is $110 and the customer's price is $16.25, I want to basically pick up on that and see, like, no way, I don't want the customer to have such a low price. So I'm going to go and click on the three little dots, conditional formatting, manage conditional formatting. And I'm going to say that if the price variance is greater than or equal to 0.50, make it green, and I want to have a little check mark on that. Then I want to add another one if the value is less than 0.5. I want it red, and I want a little X. So that will help me easily identify which prices I need to look at. As you can see, it highlights it for me in the color that I want, and it also gives me a little icon next to it. You can obviously remove the highlighting if you want. So it's up to you whether or not you just want to use highlighting, or if you want to use the icon, or if you want to use both. I want to rename the pivot table. So I'm going to double click on pivot table, and I'm going to name it custom customer price. To add a new workbook, so that this is the second workbook that I want, that is the yearly sales in Australian dollars. I'm going to click on the plus little sign. As you can see, I can now select between customer price data set and my sales purchase order and invoice data set, which is the one that I want to build this from. I can select what type of data set that I want to create. So I want to create a pivot table again. I'm going to rename this to yearly sales AUD. I want to add the following filters. So I'm going to click on the three little dots, currency filter. I only want to see Australian dollar. Click apply on that. Then I also want to add entity ID to my columns. Oh, that's the wrong one, sorry. Type is invoice. As you can see, it only gives me the options that I made available on that data set. And then I want to see mainline is yes. In the rows, I want to have type. In my columns, I want to have it as date. And I want to filter date. I only want to see 2020, 21, and 22. And on my measures, I want to see total amount. I want to rename this to amount. Then I'm going to add that gross percentage, gross profit percentage. And this is where calculated measures will be coming in. And I am going to go over to a slide soon just to explain the two differences between formats or formulas and calculated measures. Now, as you can see, the gross profit is completely incorrect on this. So what I'm going to do is just give you a bit of a overview on what calculated measures are. So a calculated measure is a measure that you can create in your pivot tables and charts using arithmetic operations with base measures. For example, you can use the following definition to calculate profit percentages. So percentage profit equals gross profit divided by amount. Unlike formula fields, which are built at the dataset level to evaluate results on a row-by-row basis, calculated measures are built at the workbook level using aggregated results. For example, if you create a formula field that calculates sales amount, each row in the dataset will show a single value based on the formula definition. If you then use the formula field as a measure or as a calculated measure in the pivot table or chart, the results are not as a calculated, sorry, as a measure in the pivot table or chart. The results are simply an aggregate of the formula field results. By contrast, calculated measures use the aggregated results as a base measure combined with arithmetic operations to display results such as year-over-year, variances, and profit percentages. These types of results are not achievable using formula fields alone. You can create as many calculated measures as you need using the field availability in the Connect dataset, including custom formula fields. Note that you can only use a calculated measure in the pivot tables and charts that you create them in. So let's navigate back to my workbook and let's go and create that calculated measure. So I'm going to click on Create Calculated Measure. I'm going to give it a name. Then I'm going to give my calculation. So estimated gross profit divided by amount. So once it actually gives you a check mark, the definition is valid, I can go and apply. If it's not valid, it will give you a clear indication that it's not valid, and it will tell you what you possibly need to change with it. So now, as you can see, so this is typically what, if you're just going to use the formula field to calculate the estimated gross profit, it will basically add all the line values together as a summary value, and the calculation is obviously completely incorrect, whereas my calculated measure value is actually giving me the correct profit percentage. So I can go and remove that estimated profit percentage. Next, what I want to build is a chart. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on that little plus sign again. At this time, I'm going to select chart instead. And I'm going to select which data set that I want to use. And I can also rename this to items returned. I want to add filter, type is returns authorization. Main line is false because I'm only wanting, I don't want to see the main line. I just want to see the item lines. Then I want to add here all my date here. And this time I want to add a advanced filter. Date ranges, I'm going to go here, and this time I'm going to go this here. And I also want to use quarter as a hierarchy instead. Series, I'm going to use item. And then I want to use quantity as a measure. And as you can see, you can easily identify which are the ones that have been returned mostly this year. I can also add titles to this chart so that when you look at it on your home dashboard, it would make a bit more sense. So I'm going to click on properties. On title, I'm going to go items returned this year or returned. And on the subtitle, I'm going to go this year. And then I can add and just give it a moment to refresh. And as you can see, items returned this year, you've got the quantity and then the quarter at the bottom. So when a user looks at this, it'll probably make a bit more sense to them. Last but not least, I am going to show you how you can create a table view. Now with table view, you'll notice that you do not have the field with the 3 little dots on the side. The reason for that is to actually filter on table view, you need to actually drag and drop that filter in there. So for instance, if I want to go mainline is false, I have to click on filter. So there it gives me all my main lines that are false. Next that I want to do is I want to add type is sales order. I want to see any of the invoices in there. And then item type, and this is where when I renamed it to item type, if I didn't, it would be type and type. So it would be quite hard to distinguish which type it is. I want to go item type. And I want to filter it so that it only gives me inventory items. I want to see the item. I want to see the quantity shipped, received, and then the quantity remaining in there as well. Then I want to filter this as well. Not equal to 0. Okay. And I want to add status in here because I want to filter by status as well. And I want to say filter. Don't want to see none of. And then I can go to closed, bold, and pending approval. Great. So I'm going to rename this to items on open sales orders. You can also export all of these records. So just by clicking export, that will export it into a CSV file. Same as with your chart, you can print it or you could export it as well. And your pivot table will have export here as well. One more thing that I wanted to show you is you can actually select the sum value over here, and that will give you a sum of everything together. So I went bottom, so it will give me the total, the grand total at the bottom. If you put it on the side, it will give me a grand total of the columns together. Okay, I'm going to go and save this workbook. I can also share this workbook with roles or users. Either with roles or users, you can select all as well, but it's better just to search it by role. Click share and I'm going to click save. I can now easily add these workbooks onto my home dashboard. Going Personalize Analytics, so you can add up to 10 analytics portlets onto your home dashboard. Click on Setup. You can go types, so I can go, I'm looking for only my charts, and there's my items returned. Do I want to see it medium, short? How do I want to see that? And I can give it a custom name if I want as well. It's just loading the chart for me. This is a test account, so it is a wee bit slower. And as you can see there, I've got my items returned. I can set this up and I can say that I'm only looking for ones that are pivot tables now. And I want that a custom pricing one. Click save. And I can go setup and add my table portlet. As you can see with the cache response, it actually gives me the data is from 34 minutes ago. And there I've got my items on open sales orders as well. I can also easily open the workbook or open this in my workbook itself by just clicking on the 3 little dots and go open in workbook, and that will take me back into the actual workbook. Great. I am going to leave some time now for questions to be asked, and I will answer the ones as best as I can.
Thanks, Michelle. That's great. We haven't had any questions as yet. I've answered a couple, which was about exporting the data to Excel, and usually it's that table format that is the easiest one to export. If you're still keen to manipulate the data in Excel to do it that way.
And you can, here it is. So on the pivot table, this was released with the last release, where you can export it in CSV as well.
Yeah, great.
So.
Awesome. And another question's just come through from Simon. Can you email these reports on a schedule like a Safe Search?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay.
But
no
yeah, unfortunately not.
Yep. Next question, can you recreate annual financial statements as one workbook?
Well, I would need to look into that to see what exactly your requirements are, but I don't see it not being possible. Yeah, it would definitely, we'd need to take it offline to see if that is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, and can you create a web query from analytics?
I think you can. I would need to just do a bit of investigation on how to. We can send the how to steps through via email.
Yeah, we can send out our follow-up questions to all the attendees afterwards for any of those. And Leighton's just helpfully suggests it was profit and loss, balance sheet, and cash flow for the annual financial statements. But we'll have a look at that and come back to him.
Okay.
Okay. I don't think there's any more. Oh, yes, there is one more. Oh, yes. Someone's asked for a link to the recording. We can definitely do that for you. No problem at all. There was certainly a lot there, Michelle. And one of the questions that I answered as we were going was that, obviously we saw you create the data set from scratch.
Yep.
And the question was, well, is there any pre-built report models available? And the answer is yes. There's a whole range of standard workbook reports to get you started, so you don't have to do everything from scratch, right?
Yeah, and do note that you need to be in your administrator role because it's available to administrators only, and you have to share it with the that you normally use. Yeah.
Got you.
But this is where you'd find it.
Awesome. And there's some pre-built workbooks too, I think, isn't there?
Yes.
Michelle? Yeah.
So under workbooks, you'll have your pre-built ones. Obviously, this does have some example ones as well, but you'll find all your workbooks, all the pre-built ones in here.
That's great. That's fantastic. Thanks so much. I mean, I think Michelle went into a lot of depth there, and there's to show, I guess, the capability of the workbook feature. But you can easily get started with, what revenue are you getting from customers through the sales invoice one, and most of that's all ready to go, and it's just more shrinking down the data that you actually want to see rather than building from scratch. So both ends, it's a really useful tool. I think being able just to easily publish those on your dashboards just make that quite a nifty little feature. Yeah. Michelle, thank you so much for taking us through that today. I really appreciate it. There's been a lot of interest in this, and you've done an excellent job in explaining it all to us. I really like the can't remember what the word is, but where you can add colors and icons. Yeah. That's an excellent feature. That really makes some of the data pop out, which you really need when you're going through lots of it. So that's fantastic.
We hope this video gave you the information you were after. If you have any further questions, get in touch with us using the links in the description.